वेरी गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन। जैसा कि आप जानते ही हैं कि नागपुर ब्रांच के द्वारा दी टॉप 10 सीरीज नॉलेज की पाठशाला के जीएसटी 2 में आज आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत है। मैं वर्चुअल डायस पे हमारे डायनामिक चेयरमैन नागपुर ब्रांच सीए साकेत बगड़िया, स्पीकर जीएसटी मास्टर सीए रितेश मेहता सर एंड कोऑर्डिनेटर ऑफ द सेशन सीए नरेश जगोटिया सर का भी स्वागत करता हूं और साथ ही सभी मेंबर्स पार्टिसिपेंट का यहां स्वागत करता हूं। दोस्तों, अभी तक जीएसटी 1 जुलाई 2017 में आया। हमने अभी 3B जीएसटीआर 9 9C बहुत भरे, उसके कंप्लायंस करते रहे। उसमें जो भी दिक्कतें आई हमारे स्पीकर ने हमको गाइड करते रहे और हम उससे बाहर आए। लेकिन अभी पिछले कुछ दिनों में जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट के द्वारा कई तरह के नोटिसेस निकल रहे हैं। इवन दो डिपार्टमेंटल ऑडिट भी चालू हो गए हैं, जिसमें हम सबको बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ रही है, समझना पड़ रहा है। और इन सब चीजों में कहीं ना कहीं अब केस लॉज भी सेटल होने लगे हैं, तो केस लॉज भी आ गए। इन सब चीज के अपडेट के लिए आज हमारे साथ स्पीकर के रूप में जानी मानी हस्ती हमारी अपनी सीए रितेश मेहता सर हैं। मैं उनका यहाँ स्वागत करता हूँ। Now I request our dynamic chairman CA साकेत बगड़िया सर से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो अपना वेलकम स्पीच दें। ओवर टू यू साकेत सर।
Thank you so much, Sanjay Bhaiya. A very good evening to all. The speaker for the session, CA Ritesh Mehta, Secretary of the branch, CA Sanjay Agrawal ji, Coordinator for the Knowledge ki Top 10 series, CA Naresh Jakotia, and respected members who are present in large numbers for this very important session. Friends, GST has always been the favorite subject of everybody now. When a person says GST, the doubts automatically come out of it because there are so many complications into that. And the way of interpretation now has become more important because nowadays it's not only about compliance of law, it's also about the interpretation. There are so many things which are coming out of it. Recent latest amendments, so many things have changed. An amnesty scheme has come. But जितना मिलता है ना, we always crave for more. हमको लगता नहीं कि नहीं यार ये क्यों नहीं दे दिया और ये भी देना चाहिए था. Even these are so many things which are changing. But in these changing scenarios, we as professionals are required to update our knowledge on a regular basis. And that is the reason this top 10 series has been launched. The basic objective of this top 10 series is that you get everything which is latest, everything which is current. You get all those things in a very short span of time, in a time span of 1 to 1.5 hours. And then you are able to put up those things into your practice. That is the reason for which we have organized this top 10 series. And we are really fortunate that Ritesh, on a very short notice, accepted this invite of him. He's an expert into the subject, a national speaker on GST law. So we are really fortunate to have Ritesh Mehta ji here for this very important session. I welcome you, sir, and I welcome all the dignitaries to this session. Just a short note about the future activities which are carried out by the Nagpur branch. We have launched the much-awaited COVID vaccination camp to be organized at Nagpur branch itself in association with the New Era Hospital. It's a Covishield vaccine. It is limited, restricted to first 250 vaccines. It's a paid one. So 780 rupees is the cost per that's a Covishield vaccine. So 780 rupees is the cost per Covishield vaccine. And that would be given at Nagpur branch itself on 22nd of June from morning 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are striving our best to take care of the members' health, and I request everybody to please take maximum benefit of this vaccination camp. Apart from this, on 21st of May, we are going to have a very important and relevant VCM on the provisions applicable for HUF, the taxation, the creation, the partition of HUF. So that is going to be a really interesting session for all of us. I request all of you to please join in large numbers for that also. That's a 2-hour CP program on Monday. Thank you so much. I welcome all of you. Over to you, Sanjay Bhai now.
थैंक यू चेयरमैन सर। मैं आज की प्रोसीडिंग को हमारा आज के कोऑर्डिनेटर नरेश जगोटिया को हैंडओवर करने के पहले हमारे आज के स्पीकर सीए रितेश मेहता सर का इंट्रोडक्शन देने का प्रिविलेज यूज करना चाहूंगा। सीए रितेश मेहता सर क्वालिफाइड एज ए बीकॉम एफसी एंड डीसा। सर 2004 से प्रैक्टिस में है और 16 साल का वास्ट एक्सपीरियंस उनको। सर के एकेडमिक अचीवमेंट में बताना चाहूंगा कि सर ने अपने सीए के चारों एग्जाम फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट में ही क्लियर किए हैं। सर ने सीए इंटर में 44th ऑल इंडिया मेरिट रैंक भी ली है। सर ने सिस्टम ऑडिट एंड इंटरनल कंट्रोल पे पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन किया है। सर चितले मेहता एंड एसोसिएट्स के पार्टनर के रूप में प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं। सर इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स, वैट, सर्विस टैक्स एंड जीएसटी के प्रैक्टिस करते हैं। सर ने बहुत कई जीएसटी और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स पे कई पेपर प्रेजेंट किए हैं और सर ने अभी तक 350 से अधिक सेमिनार में एज ए स्पीकर पार्ट लिया है। सर WRC की इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स कमेटी में एज ए मेंबर 2017-18 और 18-19 में अपना योगदान दिया है सर ने। सर के प्रोफेशनल के अलावा सोशल कंट्रीब्यूशन भी बहुत हैं। सर JCI ऑरेंज सिटी के 2011 में प्रेसिडेंट रहे हैं और उस वक्त उनको बेस्ट चैप्टर का अवार्ड भी मिला है जो कि उनकी लीडरशिप को प्रूव करता है। सर सेल्टिस बार एसोसिएशन नागपुर के ट्रेजरर रहे और उन्होंने बेस्ट स्पीकर ऑफ द ईयर का अवार्ड भी प्राप्त किया है। सर गुजराती लाट समाज के ट्रेजरर हैं। सर संपर्क बिजनेस नेटवर्किंग प्लेटफॉर्म नागपुर के सेक्रेटरी हैं और सर नाग विदर्भ चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स के टैक्स कमेटी के इंचार्ज भी हैं। एक ऐसी डायनामिक हमारी अपनी पर्सनालिटी जिसको जीएसटी का एक्सपर्ट कहते हैं और बहुत खुशी होती है कि जब हमारे बीच का कोई व्यक्ति नेशनल लेवल पे फैकल्टी के रूप में अपना नाम कमाता है तो उसमें नागपुर का भी नाम रोशन होता है। ऐसे फैकल्टी को मैं स्पीकर का यहाँ पे स्वागत करता हूँ और आज की प्रोसीडिंग हमारे आज के कोऑर्डिनेटर सीए नरेश जकोटिया सर को हैंड ओवर करता हूँ। ओवर टू यू नरेश सर। नरेश सर अनम्यूट कीजिए आपको।
थैंक यू संजय भैया, थैंक यू चेयरमैन सर। रितेश भाई, इट्स ऑलवेज प्लेजर टू हियर फ्रॉम यू। आई स्टिल रिमेम्बर जीएसटी जब 2017 में पहली बार लॉन्च हुआ था तो पूरे नॉन स्टॉप सीरीज चलाई थी रितेश भाई ने जीएसटी पे प्रोग्राम को एंड इज द वेरियस बहुत ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए वेरी सॉफ्ट ऑफ वेरी सॉर्ट आफ्टर स्पीकर है बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए। इट्स ऑलवेज प्लेजर टू हियर फ्रॉम यू। कॉन्सेप्ट था बेसिकली हर महीने में इतने कुछ ना कुछ चेंजेस जरूर आते हैं। दी टॉप 10 सीरीज, टॉप 10 जो चेंजेस है, अमेंडमेंट है, दैट पार्ट कैन बी टेकन अप ताकि एक इंटरेक्टिव सेशन रहे विदाउट सीपी अवर्स। वी कैन इंटरेक्ट विद ईच अदर, फॉर्मल बहुत ज्यादा ना करते हुए उसको इनफॉर्मल वे में प्रोग्राम हम लोग चलाने की कोशिश करना चाहते हैं। एंड आई एम वेरी हैप्पी टू शेयर विद दैट कि अभी फिलहाल 45 मेंबर्स आर पार्टिसिपेटिंग इन दिस सेशंस। अब जैसे सेशन आगे जाएगा लोग और भी ज्वाइन करेंगे, वी कैन हैव इंटरेक्शंस। I hand over the floor to Ritesh bhai for covering this series. Thank you, Ritesh bhai, please.
Thank you very much, Naresh bhaiya. Respected chairman and ever smiling chairman Saket, my dear friend Sanjay bhaiya, and all office bearers of very vibrant Nagpur branch, coordinator of this wonderful series, Naresh bhaiya. Let me tell you that this is going to be one of the best session we are having of learning. In fact, I am also attending this series. All the 5 sessions I have attended personally, and the value addition we get by attending learned faculties, learned authorities like Chandak sir, Loya sir is like valuable, most valuable. So all the office bearers and all the participants, a very good evening to all of you. I feel honored that that I'm a part of this series, and you all have invited me to share whatever little knowledge or little understanding I have of the law as of now. As our chairman very well said, that the agenda of this series is just to share current happening be it current amendments, current judgments, current rulings, whatever, because we are so engrossed in our practice that so many things come and go, and we don't keep a track of it. And when we require those judgments or rulings, we are like, अरे पढ़ा तो था हमने, लेकिन कहाँ पे है, कैसे है, we don't remember that time, we don't recollect it. So I would compliment Nagpur branch for organizing this wonderful series. Though it's there is no CP, but still the number of participants really vouch the success of this program. Friends, let's come to the session, the agenda of the session. It's not only raining outside, it's monsoon have already begun. Barish to sab jagah ho rahi, but it's also raining cats and dog in GST. Day in, day out, you see a lot of changes happening, and it's very difficult for professionals to keep a track of it. But still, it's a part of our duty, and we have to do justice with whatever practice we do in the field. I would just share my screen so that is the screen visible, Sakib? Yes, thank you. So friends, let's talk today of top 10 happenings or top 10 current things which are in GST. When day before yesterday, the chairman called me up, you have to take this session. I was a bit hesitant. Yaar, ye sirf 10 cheez mujhe cover karni, how can I would do it? Because there are so many things to cover. So how to bring it in the top 10? But still I tried my best and have identified few of the important things which as a practitioner, we all should be abreast of the recent happenings, be it legislature or be it judiciary. So I just tried to cover a few. We all know that last month only we had a GST council, 43rd and 44th GST council that was there. Then we have some amendments in rules also. Then we have some certain circulars, clarificatory circulars, which have come up for our discussion. And thereafter, I have taken few important happenings as far as this revocation is concerned, or the pain points which practitioners are facing these days. So I tried to cover all those things. I just have 8 to 10 slides just to keep a track of our discussion. Let's begin the first point of discussion. Let's take up the 43rd GST Council meeting. A lot talked about this council meeting. In fact, this is the council meeting which is happening almost after 6 months of time. Last one we had in somewhere in October 20, and this is the one we had in May 21. We had COVID and everything. So the priorities of the government was handling all those priorities. So now this 43rd GST Council, which was on 28th of May, has come out with many important announcements, many important changes for further relaxation, further making the law easier. But I always say, and I feel that the more the council meets, the more complicated it becomes. So I always pray that they should meet not frequently, so that the law remains stable. Because the more they meet, every time they bring in some amendment, some change in the law or rules or rates, and that makes the life of a practitioner very difficult. So let's go one by one. What are the few important announcements made by the council? The first and the foremost I have taken is interest under section 50. Now this has been a very painful point for all the taxpayers. We know interest is basically a compensatory things that if you have delayed in payment of tax, interest liability arises. We have section 50. But this section has been argued or have been talked about a lot for last 2 years now. So one need to understand the background, and even in fact now in Nagpur also, if you can see, many of our taxpayers are getting notices for demanding interest under this section 50. So how this section 50 is framed? The section 50 subsection 1 talks about liability to pay discharge interest in case where the tax has not been paid on time. The due dates are there. We all know the tax has to be paid on time. We also know that the mechanism to pay tax is only GSTR 3B. So in case any of your taxpayer has filed delayed 3B, so there is a delay in filing 3B, and there would also be a delay in payment of tax. And so the liability of interest arises. Now, there is another subsection 2 of 50. It says that the interest to be calculated will be prescribed in the rules, how the interest has to be calculated. But unfortunately, in the rules or the notification, if we say there is no mechanism mentioned how to calculate the interest. The only thing notified by the government was the rate of interest. They are notified that it would be 18% in case of delay of payment of tax, but they are not notified the mechanism how to calculate it. Then started the controversy. It started from Hyderabad, when the Principal Commissioner of Hyderabad in one of the case have raised a demand on the taxpayer that the interest would be levied on the gross amount itself. Now, what is gross and not net means? Gross means your tax liability on your outward supply. So say, for example, for a particular month, my outward liability was ₹1,00,000 and my input tax credit was 95 rupees. So I was required to pay 5 rupees in cash. That is a net value. So 100 is my outward liability, 95 is my input tax credit, and 5 is my cash component which I need to pay to the government treasury. Now suppose I delay in filing that return, and so I delay to make payment of ₹5. Maybe I have delayed it for 6 months. So the Principal Commissioner in that case have raised a demand that no, interest would not be applicable for ₹5. Interest would be applicable on ₹100 itself on a gross basis. So there this controversy started. Then again, a CBIC also have raised a demand letter to all the Principal Commissioners that you start collecting interest on the gross amount, and the figure I guess it was somewhere around 45,000 crore. Suddenly a figure came out that this much is the interest which needs to be collected from the taxpayer. Further, adding fuel to the fire, Hyderabad Telangana High Court in the same case, Megha Engineering, they have upheld the demand raised by the Principal Commissioner, and it's a very interesting judgment if one goes through it. What it says that the law GST is designed in such a way that you are not automatically eligible for credit. You have to avail it first. The credit becomes eligible only when you avail it and then utilize it. So eligibility is different concept, availment is different concept, and utilization is a third concept. So unless you file your GST return, how you are going to avail your ITC? There is no mechanism. So the High Court observed that no, unless you avail it, your input tax credit remains in the cloud. It remains in the air. You have not used it for setting off your liability. So the interest would be on gross amount only and not on the net amount, because ITC has not yet been availed. Forget about utilization. It has not yet been availed itself because you have not filed the return. Now the real culprit was GST network. We all know the portal. Even in the GST Council, if you read the council meeting minutes, it clearly mentions that because of this GST portal, you can't pay tax. You have to without filing return. You can pay tax only by filing return. So if I pay that 5 rupees in my cash ledger, unless I file my 3B return and adjust that 5 rupees against my liability, that 5 rupees remains in my cash ledger. So the council has accepted this issue that no, the problem is with the portal, that without filing 3B return, I am not able to adjust my cash. So where is the question of paying interest on the gross basis? Then further, we got a judgment from Madras High Court in Reflex Industries, where a stand was taken that no, interest would be payable only on the net amount and not on the gross amount. In fact, we all know, we all are commerce students, we all know what is interest. Interest is basically a compensatory nature that I had to pay you ₹1,00,000, but I had delayed it by payment of 3 months. So I had to pay interest for that 3 months. So here also my liability was only 5 rupees because 95 credit was available. My liability to pay was only 5 rupees. So if I have delayed in filing return, the interest should be levied only on the 5 rupee and not on the 100 rupees. And after Madras High Court, we got few other judgments, few other courts where also they also concluded that no, the interest, if any payable, would be only on the net amount and not on the gross amount. And thereafter, a clarification also came from the Finance Ministry that no, we got the point. We will insert a proviso. So the proviso was inserted in section 50 saying that the interest would be payable only on the cash element, not on the credit element. So things was clear. But the problem is the proviso was implemented, was inserted, was not notified. So it remained in the law, but it was not notified for a long period of time. And in the meantime, department started sending notices for calculation of interest on the gross amount. So in this Finance Act 2021 only, they have made it retrospective. They have given a retrospective effect to this section, to this proviso, meaning thereby from 1st July 2017 itself, this provision would be in place in the law, meaning thereby the interest would be applicable only on the net basis and not on the gross basis. One has to be very clear. We are now getting a lot of notices from the department, and I would request all of you that kindly apply our mind and to check the calculation of the interest. Still, we are getting notices. No doubt the department has now rectified it. Now they are sending it on a net basis, but still there are a lot of calculation mistakes being done by the in the notices. If you do a proper calculation, because many times the due dates have also been extended. If you remember 2019-20, because of extension of the portal non-functioning, the due dates have been extended. So we have to calculate properly. My due date was say 25th of July. I paid it on 30th July. So my interest would be for 5 days. So that way we have to calculate the demand of interest. Just don't go blindly, whatever the notice has come and you pay it off. First and foremost, I would request all of us, we practitioners, that when we file a return, make it a point that we pay interest at the same time only. Don't wait for the notice to come. If you are aware that your client or taxpayer is delayed in filing the return, ask him that you calculate along with the tax the interest component also, so that we have peace of mind. In future interest demand will not be there. So now with this retrospective amendment, almost the controversy has been now kept to rest. But another issue which I still feel is unanswered is, what about my cash ledger? Now in the same example, say 100 rupees was outward, 95 was my input tax credit, and I was liable to pay only 5 rupees in cash. Now say for example that 5 rupees was already there in my cash ledger. For many, it could be any instance, I would have paid advance. I would have paid tax in advance, or there would be my TDS deduction, or there would be my TCS deduction. So 5 rupees was already there sitting in my cash ledger. Still, I had delayed filing in return 3B. Still, am I liable to pay interest? So this question is still remains to be answered, and it needs to be tested, because I have already discharged my liability that by paying my payment of challan, and that amount sits in my cash ledger. So now the question, the department says is that it is sitting in your cash ledger. It has not come into our account. But I don't agree to that argument, because once you pay the amount, it goes into your cash ledger. It comes out of your bank statement. It goes into the cash ledger. Now, though that cash ledger is your own cash ledger, but still you can't just take that amount back. If you want that amount back, you have to file a refund application, meaning thereby that even that amount which has gone into the cash ledger goes into the Consolidated Fund of India. And if I want that amount back, I have to file a refund application. So for me, that amount has already gone from my account. So I still have an understanding, or my view is that interest would not be applicable when cash component already have that balance. Even section 49 is also there. Section 49 also has one explanation. It says that once you make the payment in the government account by that challan, it is to be deemed as received by the government. So once I paid it, I have paid that difference of 5 rupees on due date, 20th. My liability is complete. The only thing I have delayed is filing of return. Maybe I will file it, say, after 3 months. But interest should not be applicable in such cases. I think this is the point we need to put up before the department. We need to argue it strongly, and it has got merits, and we can save interest liability from on this ground. Next announcement is about relaxation under section 168A. What is 168A? We all know that there is a provision in the law that there is a power given to the law that you can extend the time limit of few or proceedings in case of force majeure. This we have already seen last COVID also. There was an extension. There was extension from 20th March to 29th June 2020. So this period has to be excluded for counting of limitation period. The same relaxation has come up again, this time with COVID second wave. All the time limit for various compliances which fall between 15th April to 29th June will be extended up to 30th June. So all your time limits for various compliances, a blanket exemption has been given, extension has been given, not a item-wise extension, it's a blanket extension. But still we need to keep a note of it that there are certain exceptions where this relaxation would not be applicable. And these are like, they have given some certain sections where this blanket extension would not be applicable. Say, for example, of time of supply or issuance of tax invoice or even for registration. Now, you know that you have to, once you cross a threshold limit, you have to take registration within 30 days. So if your 30 days falls between 15th April to 29th June, you can't take a stand that, no, the date has been extended, I will file it till 30th June. No, you have to do it on that day itself by filing a proper application for registration. Filing of returns, even this relaxation doesn't apply to filing of returns. There would be certain separate relaxation, but this blanket relaxation is not applicable. So the question arises, then what this relaxation would be applicable to? So this relaxation would be applicable to various other compliances, like you have to file a refund application. Say, for example, your refund application filing 2 years was getting time barred on 30th April. So 30th April 2021. So now it will automatically get extended to 30th June 2021. Revocation of registration or reply to show cause. You have got a show cause notice, you have to reply it. Automatically all those dates would have been extended to 30th June 2021. In fact, we also have a Supreme Court judgment also, suo moto judgment taken by Supreme Court, where they have already extended a long period, 15th March 2020 to 14th March 21, and further, and second judgment also they have extended the time frame. But the view taken by department is this suo moto judgment or order of Supreme Court will be applicable only for judicial proceedings and not for quasi-judicial proceedings. So this argument is there, but this relaxation will keep handy for all of us for filing of appeal and other relaxations. Then coming to the point number 3, clarification on certain services. The council has this time have discussed, deliberated on certain exemptions which were there on certain services, and they have come up with a clarification circular. In fact, the circular just came 2 days back, 2-3 days back, on 6-7 services. These are all services where exemption was already there, but because of the wording of the exemption or few rulings, there was a confusion whether exemption would be applicable or not, and on that only this clarification come up with. I will just go through few important clarification. First is for educational services, educational institutions. For educational institutions, there is already an exemption in notification number 12/2017, which talks about exemption notification. Entry 66, there is an exemption for educational institution where any services which are mentioned over there, if supplied to educational institution, would be exempt from GST. Now here, the definition or the explanation given, educational institution defined was only preschool and schooling up to higher secondary education. So the question was arise whether these Anganwadis, which are not formal education, which are not forming part of the formal education system, but still they are, Anganwadis are there. So whether midday meal supplied to Anganwadi would be exempt or not. So if you go by the exemption, you would conclude that no, the exemption is not applicable to Anganwadis, but they have clarified here that even Anganwadis are not preschool or formal education. The supply of mid-meal catering services in case of midday meal would be exempted under GST. Further, one more thing they have added is the exemption only talks about when it is funded by central government, state government, or local authority. So if there is any educational institution which is monitored or which is administered by these authorities, then only the exemption would be applicable. But now here they said even if any institution runs an Anganwadi which is funded by corporate fund also, CSR fund or whatever, even in those cases, the exemption to the caterer for service of midday meal would be there. Then next is again for an educational institution. We all know that again educational institution also enjoy exemption on the fees they received for entrance exams. So that is exempt. But here also again the educational institution was defined as preschool and primary school and secondary and higher secondary. What about the boards? Like we have central board, CBSE, we have state boards, which they also collect fees for entrance fees. So clarification has come up that even that will be exempt from GST. There would be no tax levy of GST. The boards are also covered, made part of educational institution just for entrance fees purpose. Then another issue was service by way of access to road or bridge. Now we all know that contractor who constructs a road or bridge and which are on BOT basis, so it gets two types of revenue. First is a revenue from the user, like we as a consumer, we use the road and then we pay toll tax. So this was exempted, already exempted under the regime, GST regime notification number 12. Further, even if they get it some annuity payment from NHAI or other authorities for operation and maintenance of those roads and bridge, even that was exempt. But the controversy started with an advanced ruling from Rajasthan. It was Nagaur Mulchand Highways, wherein the company has applied for advanced ruling and they have argued that even construction of road, the NHAI had paid them the annuity amount for construction of roads. So even that should be exempt under this notification number 1217. But the Rajasthan advanced ruling agreed that yes, even this will be exempt. But if you read the exemption notification properly, it doesn't cover construction services. It merely covers the access to road by payment of toll or annuity. So the scope was very limited. The advanced ruling has, for the first time, it has given a favorable judgment, a favorable order ruling. So it was clarified later on, or rather by this circular, that there will not be any exemption to any contractor for construction of road. The consideration they receive towards construction, it will be only towards annuity charges or toll charges they collect for use of that road or bridge. Then another interesting clarification came up for this ropeway services. Now we all know that composite supply works contract, we say, when we do a works contract for central government, state government or local authority, it attracts a concessional rate of tax of 12%. Otherwise, the rate of tax is 18%. But if you do it for state government, central government, local authority, it attracts concession of 12%. Now the question is whether even ropeway services, installation and works contract of ropeway services would also attract 12% rate. So how they have concluded, they say that this concession of 12% is only when you are, first of all, you are doing works contract. It should be a works contract service. Second, it should be for central, state, local authority. And third, it should not be used for business, industry, profession. So even if you do any construction for state, central or local authority, but it is used to earn money out of it, then the concessional rate of 12% will not be applicable. So if I construct an administrative office or if I construct a hospital run by these authorities, then maybe 12% would be applicable. But here, what they have concluded, they say that ropeway is a tourism development construction. So this civil structure is not other than for business, profession or industry. So 12% concession would not be applicable. You have to pay 18%. So a stepmotherly treatment has been done for ropeway installation and contract. Then another very important clarification which came out for milling of wheat into flour and pulses into rice, now paddy into rice. Now this was a much talked about issue for last 3-4 years. Now what we understand is that many states like Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, they have a system where they give the paddy or wheat to private companies for milling, paddy into rice or wheat into flour. And when the manufacturer or the job worker raises an invoice on the government it would raise the tax because it was taxable. There are exemptions for agricultural produce item, like if you do warehousing, if you do transportation of agricultural produce, all are exempt under GST. But this job work or milling process was not included. So many companies have to pay tax on it. Another controversy would be started was what would be the rate of tax? Job work attracts 5%, but the condition for transaction to be a job work would be that the principal should be a registered taxpayer. Now here the principal is government and they don't have GST registration. They merely have TDS registration. So there was a controversy whether the benefit of 5% would be taken or only 18% should be levied. So now here they have come up with a clarification, and it's a very suitable clarification which are more in the interest of the government only. They said that this milling job work would be covered under an exemption. There is an exemption in the notification which says that if you are doing any composite supply to central, state or local authority, and where the material value is less than 25% of the total contract, so in that case the exemption was there. So they tried to fit this milling also in this exemption. They said no, this is a composite contract of goods and services, and material portion should be less than 25%. If you satisfy this condition, you enjoy the concession, you enjoy the exemption, and there is no levy of tax for milling. So it's a welcome move, but surely it will benefit more to the government rather than the taxpayer, because ultimately they were collecting it from the government. Now in few of the states, the government doesn't do it on their own. They have a Apex marketing committee, and they get it routed through them. The government supplies it to the Apex committee, and the Apex committee gives for milling to the millers, and the miller raises an invoice on the Apex committee. So whether this exemption notification would still be available to them, that's something which needs to be seen to, because the notification clearly says that the exemption would be only when it is supplied to central government, state government, local authority. Even government entity and government enterprises are also covered, but whether this Apex committees would also be covered here or not, we have to see whether the exemption would be there for them also. So another important announcement, or in fact a reform which has been done in this council meeting, is about real estate sector. Now we all know that from 1st April 2019, complete real estate sector taxation has been shifted from the ITC and collection of input, and from the regime where there is no input tax credit eligible to the real estate promoter. So here from 1st April 2019, there was a ad hoc rate of 5%, 1%, and you are not allowed for any input tax credit. The only case where the input tax credit was allowed in case of real estate was in case of a joint development agreement. So what happens in a joint development agreement? There is a landowner, there is a promoter developer. They both come together for jointly development of a plot. Say for example, I'm entering into an agreement with a landowner for joint development on a piece of plot where we would be constructing say 10 flats. Out of that 10 flats, I would be giving landowner 3 flats, and I will be keeping the rest of the 7 which I will be selling to the open market, and the 3 flats which has been given to the landowner has to be sold by the landowner to the open market, any customer he gets. But the problem here was, say for example, in this example, 3 flats were with the landowner. Now he was lucky enough that initially at the beginning of the construction only he gets 3 customers, and he sells the 3 flat to those customers. And he was supposed to collect GST. The GST would be 5%, 1%. He has to collect it. So he has collected from the customer, and he has also paid it to the government treasury. But at the time of completion, say 2 years later, 3 years later, when the scheme was complete, the promoter developer has to charge GST from the landowner on the 3 flats which were allotted to the landowner as a share of landowner. So here, what was the point? The landowner he has discharged his tax, he has collected tax from the customer, and he has paid it to the government treasury. Now, after say 3 years, the promoter developer would collect tax from the landowner, and he was what to do with the credit. The credit was of no use to the landowner. So here the clarification which came by this council, and still it requires amendment in the act, which has not yet happened. We have not seen the notification. It is merely an announcement. It says that the promoter here has been given an option that he can raise an invoice to the landowner anytime before a completion, before he gets the completion certificate. So the option is the promoter developer to raise an invoice immediately at the time of agreement. Also, he can raise an invoice to the landowner and collect tax from him, which is eligible as a credit to the landowner. So then landowner can take the credit and he can adjust that credit against the tax liability, and if there is any differential amount, he can pay it. So it's a very welcome move. For last 2 years, all the promoter developer were having the pain of this provision, because the credit which was later on available with landowner was merely a cost to him. He couldn't use it. He couldn't adjust it against his liability because his liability is already discharged. Then relaxation in tax filing. We all know with COVID second wave badly hitting, there was ought to have relaxation, and the relaxation was already announced. In fact, this council meeting has only extended the relaxation. Earlier, the relaxation was given for 2 months, that is for the month of March and April. And this council has extended it to even include the May also, month of May. So what is the relaxation? Let me tell you very clearly, there is no change in due dates. We all, in general perception, hum sabko lagta hai due date badh gayi. So the due date remains the same. Why I'm stressing on this word due date? Because say after 2 years, you get a notice of an interest. You have to remember that the due date was this only, the 20th or whatever the date. It has not extended. So only relaxation has been given in form of late fees, or it has been given in form of relaxation in form of interest also. So the relaxation, it's a very big chart. It's like a railway timetable. For a taxpayer less than 5 crore, this is a relaxation. For taxpayer more than 5 crore, this is a relaxation, and so on and so forth. But we need to understand only relaxation is in form of late fees. Also, relaxation has been given in form of interest. Interest would be for first 15 days, the concessional interest of 9%, thereafter 18%, and so on and so forth. Such relaxation has been given. I think that is not, we need not go into it. You all have already would have gone for it. Another very important relaxation which I need to highlight here is about 36(4). Rule 36(4), we all know that calculation of input tax credit as per 2A. So the relaxation is that for next 3 months, that is for the month of April, May, and June, we don't have to do it on a monthly basis, calculation April, May. We can do it while we're filing the June return, and we will consolidate all the adjustment, and accordingly we can take the credit in June. So for the month of April and for the month of May, there is no restriction. You can take credit as per your books of accounts. Next scheme is amnesty scheme. We all were hoping कि कोई बड़ी amnesty scheme आएंगी, बहुत बड़ी आएंगी, but it didn't happen that way. A very small amnesty scheme. I don't know how many of us will be benefited. It's a scheme for non-filers. So if any of your taxpayer is lucky that he has remained non-filer so long and his registration is active. We have not seen many registrations which are kept active. Department have cancelled their registration if your return is pending. But in fact, in case any of your registrations are active, then you can go for this amnesty. It is open from 1st July 17. Sorry. Yeah, the window will be only for 3 months. That is June, July, August. So you have to file all your returns, pending returns, starting from July 17 to April 21 in the window given, that is of 3 months. And the relaxation in the form of amnesty is the only late fees they have reduced for nil returns, maximum 500 rupees per month. And for other than nil, it is maximum 1,000 rupees per month. So this is the only sort of lollipop they have given so that people who are non-filers can get on track back in the tag. But one thing I would like to caution all of you is, I remember a movie dialogue in one of the Bollywood movie. It says that बुलाती है वो मगर जाना नहीं, बुलाती है वो मगर जाना नहीं, रिटर्न भरोगे तो 16/4 के आड़े आना नहीं. So my dear friends, any of your clients, we would be very excited. Teacher amnesty आ गई, इसमें आ जाइए, we will file all our returns. It's welcome, but be cautious that 16(4) is there. सो आपने अगर यहाँ पे 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 के रिटर्न अभी 3 महीने की विंडो में फाइल किए, देन 16(4) would block your credit and you would immediately get a notice from the department you have filed it late, you are not eligible for input tax credit. So if you are ready for that, then you can go for it. Otherwise, this scheme will be of no use. This will be only helpful to those recipients. Like I'm a recipient, I have procured some goods or services from a supplier whose registration was not active or who has not filed the return. If he files it, I will get it in my two-way. So at least a solace to the recipient would be there that my supplier has filed a return. Otherwise, I don't see any benefit in this scheme. Then rationalization of late fees, a big demand for last 4 years. People were shouting late fees है, nil के return है, फिर भी 5,000 रुपए late fees भरनी पड़ रही है. So they have rationalized it, but again they have made it quite complicated. 1.5 करोड़ से नीचे का टर्नओवर है तो late fees इतनी रहेगी. 1.5 करोड़ से 5 करोड़ है तो 2,000 रुपीज, 5 करोड़ के ऊपर है तो 5,000 रुपीज. कंपोजिशन डीलर के लिए भी है. So they have rationalized it, but the silver lining is this will be applicable for 3B and R1 both. So if in future, if we get any notice for late fees of delay in payment of R1, we can take benefit of this rationalization. And this will be applicable for future also now. So it's a welcome move. Last announcement, which was important for all of us, is about annual return and reconciliation. We all chartered accountants are quite upset with the time the budget has passed, and we all discuss, "Arey, abhi to GST audit nahi hai." And we were of a view that only GSTR 9 annual return would be there and there would not be any 9C. So that is not the case. The council has come up very clearly on that. Even the Budget Finance Act was clear on that, but still there were certain confusions going on in the circle that 9C would not be there. So the council has clarified it that there would be a 9, GSTR 9, there would be a 9C also. The only thing in the 9C is that it will be self-certified. So it can be certified by a CFO or a partner or a director, but no need of chartered accountant to certify it. So what I perceive is, what I foresee is that though the certification has gone out, but still we have to do all the hard work and reconciliation which we are earlier doing it. So things are in place, and the better thing is our liability is gone out because we don't have to certify anymore. It's on a self-certification basis. We have to prepare it. So that is there. Another point which I would like to highlight here is the council has also come out with a clarification that GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 would be now final returns, meaning thereby they have tried a lot on GST returns. We all know earlier we had a 1, 2, 3 scheme. Then they have, in the last year, they have thought of annexure GST Annex 1, Annex 2, and those were proposed, but all those have been scrapped now. Now for future, at least short term, GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 will remain for a long time, and accordingly all the amendments which have to be made in the Act has to be done, and that will be done. So this is all about 43rd GST Council. I had taken some time because important points were there. 44th GST Council, immediately in the 43rd itself, a group of ministers were formed. There was a lot of demand from trade and industry that you reduced rate of tax on important ingredients which are used for COVID treatment, be it medicines, drugs, or oximeter or sanitizer, etc., etc. So it's a welcome move. They have reduced rate of tax on most of the items. Even in fact, there are 2 drugs which they have even made it nil rated. So most of them, like for ambulance, they have got it from 28% to 12%. It's a welcome move. Though it is late, but it's always say better late than never. So this is done. But what I want to tell you one thing or share with you one thing, there is a time frame we need to be careful about. This reduction in rate has not been done permanently. Okay, so this has been done from 14th of June to 30th of September. So this reduction is effective only for a short period of time. Maybe if time demands, they may extend it further also, but as of now, it is only for this short period of time. I just want to bring here 2-3 important points to share with you. First and foremost is with this reduction in rate of tax, immediately a order has been issued from this Ministry of Chemical Fertilizer, Department of Pharmaceutical, to all the pharma drug companies that now, since the rates have gone down, you have to adjust your MRP in such a way that you pass on this benefit to the customer. So again, we have this anti-profiteering, sword of anti-profiteering hanging on all the manufacturers who don't pass on the benefit to the customer. I just want to highlight 2 points here. First is about time of supply. A lot of people started asking कि ये जो rate कम हुए 12 का 5 हो गया 28 का 12 हो गया ये कैसे applicable होगा? Will it be applicable from the 14th June itself? So you can't give a ad hoc reply कि हाँ applicable हो गया. You have to see the facts. What are the facts? The provision is about time of supply. We have to see what are the circumstances. If you have, say, for example, if any manufacturer has taken advance on 10th of June, okay, against supply of certain drugs, and he has also supplied it on 12th of June. The only thing he has not issued an invoice, and he has issued an invoice on 15th of June. So what would be the rate of tax? Will it be the reduced rate or would it be the earlier rate? So here time of supply comes into play. I would just conclude by saying that out of these three instances, three events, that is payment, receipt of amount, consideration, issue of invoice, and the third is supply of goods. The two which happens in a time frame, say the two of the things have happened before the announcement of the date, this rate reduction, then the old rate would be applicable. And in case whether any two of the events have occurred after the announcement, then the new rate would be applicable. Another important thing is about reversal of ITC. Now, these two drugs which have gone from 5% to nil rated, the question arises here is about reversal of ITC. Now, immediately for this 3 months, this two item become exempt supply for me. And we all know section 17 comes into play. Once you are supplying an exempt goods, you are not allowed for input tax credit, and thus reversal of input tax credit of direct input services, and also common credit has to be done. We have to keep note of it. Many of us don't keep a track of it. And third and most important thing, which is the talk of the town, is what about my unutilized credit? Say, for example, I'm a super stockist of hand sanitizer and I had a stock of 10 crores, which I procured from my manufacturer paying 18% of GST. So I have a credit of 1 crore 80 lakhs in my credit ledger. Now from 14 June onwards, I will be supplying it for 5% for three months of time. So on 10 crores, I will be paying only 5% of tax. What would be my status of my unutilized input tax credit? I have paid tax at 18%. Now I will be selling it at 5%. The 13% remains in my credit ledger. And I am a trader. It will take a long time for me to adjust this tax liability, the credit, maybe 2, 3, 4 years. So can I go and claim a refund? So the question is a very valid question. But unfortunately, there is circular number 125, which was a master circular for refund. And there they have stated that in case of change of rate, this will not be treated as inverted tax structure eligible for refund. So the circular says that you have to adjust that unutilized credit for whatever time period you have, but you can't claim a refund. Though my personal view is that is not a correct way the circular should be interpreted. The circular clearly says that you are not eligible for refund, but still, in my view, the taxpayer should be allowed refund, because circulars are not binding on taxpayer. It is binding on the officer, maybe. Yeah, it's binding on the officer, but not on me. So I should be allowed to claim refund, and one has to litigate by claiming refund application, and has to fight a long battle to get the amount back. Then there are certain changes in IGST Act, though there are more, but I have just highlighted only 2 of them because these are quite important. Section 16 of IGST Act, there was a provision for refund of zero-rated supply. So if I'm a zero-rated supplier, that is, I'm either exporting my goods or services, or I'm supplying it to SEZ. There I was eligible to claim the refund either of unutilized input tax credit, which was there pooled in my credit ledger, or another option given to me was you export or you make a supply with payment of tax, and you take the credit of refund of the tax which you have paid. So there were 2 options there in section 16, but unfortunately with this Finance Act 2021, they have zeroed in the option of with payment of tax. So they say now that this with payment of tax option will be notified only for specific set of exporters or specific set of goods or services. It will not be a general provision or general facility that any exporter or any SEZ supplier can go for with payment of tax. It is mandatory for all of us that if you make an export or any supply to SEZ, you have to claim the unutilized input tax credit only. And we all know how painful it is to claim a refund of unutilized input tax credit with so many ifs and buts, and the circular giving so many conditions, matching of 2A and everything comes into play, which was not there when you supply export or supply to SEZ with payment of tax, because you would get immediately the IGST account back into your account. Another very important condition which has been brought in is about export proceeds. Dear friends, under IGST Act, the export has been defined as, export of goods has been defined as taking goods from a country to cross the custom frontier and for any other country. So there was no mention of any collection of proceeds, but now rule has been inserted, which says, in fact, even the section 16 has been amended that export proceeds have to be realized. Then only you will be eligible for the benefit of refund. If you're not able to realize your export proceeds, even if you have taken the refund of IGST, you have to redeposit it, you have to repay it along with interest. So the new condition has been inserted in the Act, IGST Act, which demands for export proceeds. And mind you, one more thing, that there is no free hand that you can get the proceed anytime in 2, 3, 4 years. No, it has been linked with FEMA Act. So as per the FEMA, the time frame is 180 days. So you have to get the proceed within 180 days only. Otherwise, you have to pay back the refund which you have availed. Then there are certain amendment in rules, very welcome amendments. First is about refund application. Now we all know that there is a limitation period for application of refund, that is 2 years from the relevant date. But unfortunately, there was the system, the way it was designed, you have to apply for a refund by filing RFD 01, and the officer has to issue a acknowledgement in RFD 02 within 15 days. So either he has to issue an acknowledgement, or if he is not satisfied with the application, you have not properly filed the application, you have not made the proper attachment, he can issue a deficiency memo. So that deficiency memo has to be issued in RFD 03. Now, what was the problem? We all know that, say, for example, 18-19, the limitation period for refund application was March 31st, March 21. Now, I just wake up on 30th March 21 and I file my application on 30th March 21, my original application. But the officer found it deficient and he has raised a deficiency memo. Now, the system is designed in such a way that I can't reply to the deficiency memo. I have to file a fresh application. So I got a deficiency memo on, say, 10th of April, and I filed a rectified application on 11th of April. But that 11th of April, my rectified application got time barred. And so the department has rejected the refund, saying that I applied on 10th of April, 11th of April, which is time barred. You should have applied it before 31st of March only. And so this refund is not eligible, you are not eligible for refund. And there are, even in this limitation period for refund, are being taken very seriously. Even it was taken seriously in excise regime also, service tax also, and now the same is done here also. So now what is the amendment is that they have excluded the period, that is the period from the date on which application is made to the date on which the deficiency memo was communicated to the taxpayer. So this period is excluded. So now if I file it on 30th of March, and I got the deficiency memo on 10th of April, so 31st to 10th has been excluded, and I can file it on 11th also. So that is a welcome move, which has done by amending the rule. Another is withdrawal of refund application. Now this was also important because you all would be aware that the portal has designed in such a way that one can file a refund application for a particular category of refund for a particular period only once. So if, for example, I'm an exporter and I have filed a refund application for period 2021, okay, for quick payment of IG or for unutilized ITC for 2021. Now, for certain reason, if my application gets rejected, I won't be able to file the refund application again for the same category of that is export of goods, because the portal has been designed in such a way. So now what happened, the amendment has been brought in a rule, and even the portal has been updated in such a fashion that now you apply for a refund. And if you come to know that no, you have not made certain attachment, or you have not verified certain, or you have made some mistake in claiming the refund, or even if the deficiency memo has been issued to you, instead of filing fresh application, you first withdraw this refund application. So the provision has been there. No doubt there has been certain checks which has been placed that you can't withdraw the refund application once your refund has been sanctioned, or once your refund has been withheld, or a provisional refund has been issued. So that check is there. Otherwise, it's a welcome move. Third is about e-way bill blocking. It was quite sensible. We all know that if my e-way bill is blocked for non-filing of return, I can't prepare a e-way bill. So I can't supply goods, obviously, because I can't prepare a bill. But now what was happening is, if I am a regular taxpayer, I am a prompt taxpayer, and I want to supply goods to a person who is not regular, who has not filed his return and his e-way bill is blocked. But since his e-way bill was blocked, even then also I can't raise the e-way bill on him. It was showing that the recipient's e-way bill is blocked. You can't, GST number is blocked. You can't raise the e-way bill on him. But now they have rectified this mistake. They said, if I'm a regular taxpayer, my GST number is, registration is regular, my e-way bill portal is regular, I can raise a e-way bill on anyone, even on the recipient whose e-way bill is cancelled. So this is a welcome move. Then revocation of cancellation of registration. This is a very hot topic going on right now. We all know recently our RTI application also came up with a astonishing facts and figure that almost 15 lakhs taxpayers registration has got cancelled because of non-filing of registration, non-filing of returns, or no business for last 6 months, and various reasons the department have gone ahead and cancelled the registration. So what was the remedy available? Remedy was already available in the law. It was in the form of revocation of registration. You can file an application to the proper officer for revocation of the registration which has got cancelled. But unfortunately, this was not properly uniformly followed everywhere. So an SOP has been brought in, wherein proper modus operandi which has to be followed for application of revocation, then that application to be properly addressed. So the proper SOP has been given. Already the provision was there that you can file a revocation application within 30 days of time period, the time from which you came to know that your registration has been cancelled, the cancellation order which has been communicated to you, from that 30 days you can apply for revocation. Further, this SOP has given for the more 60 more days, that is 30 plus 60. So if you have not applied for revocation within 30 days, next 30 days you can apply to the Joint Commissioner. And even if you have not applied in those 60 days, the next 30 days you can apply for the Commissioner with a genuine ground that what was the reason why you have not applied it in the time frame. So in all, 90 days period has been made available to us. And thereafter, the second recourse, if you have not made an application for revocation in this 90 days, the only recourse available is you have to file an appeal before the appellate authority. And even there is a time of 3 months with a 1 month delay condonation allowed. So 4 months time you get. So almost you get 200 days for filing of revocation. And a lot of appeals have been started coming in for this revocation because officers have upfront rejected the revocation application that you are time barred, you have not filed it within the due date, and we are not going to revocate the cancellation. In fact, I've seen not many appeals also first appeal also getting rejected because the power given to the first appeal authority is only to condone a delay of 1 month. He can't go ahead and condone the delay of a bigger delay. People are filing a revocation for delay of 500 days, 600 days. That is happening. So now the only recourse is second appeal has to be done. But another thing which we need to keep in mind is the hidden threat which is there. The hidden threat is also again 16(4). So if you revocate your registration, say from 2 years back, you revocate it and you file, you have to give a declaration that I will file all my pending returns. So if you file all the pending return and if you claim an input tax credit which is barred as per 16(4), you are going to get a notice on that also. So one has to take a proper decision before filing revocation of cancellation of registration. Now, this is a very interesting topic which I just intentionally included in the today's agenda. It's about intermediary, and why it has become interesting just because recently a judgment from Bombay High Court has come up, and it's very interesting. As a student of law, we all should read a judgment and and try to update ourselves. I would just give us a short background of what all the provision is. If you go to IGST Act, we all know there is a provision, there is a concept called as intermediary. They have defined it in section 2 also of IGST Act. They say person or agent or broker who facilitates the supply of goods or services or both between two or more persons, will, you call it by any name, will be an intermediary. Now the interesting thing, up till now we don't have any problem, the definition is proper, but the interesting thing is the place of supply provision for intermediary. We all know that to determine whether a transaction is an interstate transaction or an intrastate transaction, there are two important things which one has to identify. First is location of the supplier, and the third is location of the supplier and the place of supply. So now, say for example, I'm an intermediary sitting at Nagpur, and my principal is in United States. Okay, I'm on his behalf. I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm getting certain orders from the Indian customers, and I'm providing those orders to the supplier who is based in United States, and I'm getting certain brokerage or commission. Now I'm supplying the service out of India, okay, because the principal is sitting in America. So I would be raising an invoice, export invoice, because I would be raising an invoice of foreign currency because he is based in India. But there is a deeming fiction in IGST Act. It says that in case of intermediary, the place of supply would be the location of supplier itself. So what it means that my place of location of supplier, I am based at Nagpur. Even though my client or my customer is based in US, the place of supply is deemed to be in Nagpur only. So now both location of supplier as well as place of supply, both are in Nagpur. So it's an intrastate supply. It's not a export. It will not be treated as interstate supply. It will not be treated as export. And no benefit of export would be given to me. In fact, I have to pay GST on intrastate, treating it as intrastate supply, CGST and SGST. So this provision is not a new provision. This is from the time of service tax also. And a lot of judgments have been there. What to treat as intermediary, whether I'm a broker or not. If I'm doing on a principal to principal basis, will I be termed as intermediary or not? There are a lot many judgments on those aspects. But the interesting thing which recently came up was in Gujarat High Court, one of the case where this Material Recycling Association, I quoted citation also, the constitutional validity of this section 13 subsection 8 was challenged, that how you can deem a provision when you have all other provision. The general provision says that place of supply would be the location of recipient in normal cases, but why in the case of intermediary you are deeming it as a location of supply itself? So the Gujarat High Court has gone into a depth and concluded that no, nothing doing. The provision, the government has power. I'll just go through a few observations of the Honorable Gujarat High Court. It says that Parliament has exclusive power under Article 246A of the Constitution to frame laws for the interstate supply of goods or not. So they have rejected the claim, the validity, constitutional validity, which was there in front of them for consideration. They have rejected the petition. But the same again came up before Bombay High Court recently in Dharmendra M. Jani also. So again, a very interesting case which was happened, that there was a dissenting views of the judge. There were two judges hearing the matter, and both the judges had a dissenting view. Honorable Justice Ujjal Bhuyan of Bombay High Court, he has observed and held in the favor of the assessee or the appellant, while another judge, Honorable Justice Abhay Ahuja, has held in line of Gujarat High Court. And few observations which I just would like to highlight. Honorable Justice Ujjal Bhuyan, who has held it in favor of assessee, said that by artificially creating a deeming provision in section 13(8), it runs contrary to the scheme of CGST as well as IGST Act. So you have artificially inserted a provision, whereas the scheme of GST is destination-based tax. Okay, so I am based at Nagpur, but the service recipient is based at America. So the destination-based tax, it should be the location, should be the place of supply, should be America and not Nagpur. But you have artificially placed this provision. He also completely counter to the very fundamental principle on which GST based, that is destination based consumption tax. So he has held that 13(8) of IGST Act is ultra vires besides being unconstitutional. So this is what Honorable Justice has held. Now another Justice, Abhay Ahuja, in line of this Gujarat High Court, he has concluded that when there is a specific provision defining intermediary in section 2 subsection 13, the general provision, that is 2 subsection 6 is there, that the general provision would be the place of supply would be that of recipient, will not be made applicable. Yes, he has further gone ahead and said that once the Parliament has a power to execute, to power under Article 246 to constitute the law, and they have all the powers, double taxation or this deeming fiction doesn't stand up for as an argument. So he has he was of a view that intermediary, the place of supply would be there, and it would be treated as intra-state supply only, and CGST, SGST of those states would be attracted, and it will not be treated as export. So it's a very interesting judgment, though it runs into hundreds of pages. But as a student of law, we should just go through how a justice or a judge also interpret the law, and the same law they have interpreted in two different ways. Now coming to the, I think we have time of 15 minutes. I just have 2 slides to cover. Yes. So this point I would like to highlight about provisional attachment. Now we are observing that lot of notices or lot of attachments are happening on this ground of provisional attachment. We have this provision section 83 in the CGST Act. And before I just go into a landmark judgment of Supreme Court, I just would like to highlight in this Union Budget 2021, the powers of this section has been widened. Earlier, it was limited only to taxable persons. So you can make provisional attachment only of a taxable person. But now the scope has been widened, and it has included also those persons who retain the benefit of a transaction. So now we all know there's fake invoices and everything are going on. So the mastermind is someone different, but a registered person is say X, but the mastermind is Y. And earlier the provisional attachment was applicable only on X. They didn't have a scope to provisionally attach bank or property of Y. But now with this Union Budget, they have extended the scope, and furthermore, the attachment provisions were only limited to few sections, assessment of non-filers or assessment of unregistered person or 73, 74. But now with this budget, they have covered almost all sections, section 59 to section 80 for all the sections, self-assessment, provisional assessment, scrutiny of returns. So if they find your returns are not proper on the scrutiny, they can do provisional attachment. So now this provisional attachment tool is being used very frequently by the department. It's a very easy tool. They go ahead and attach your bank attachment. They do bank attachment or provisional attachment of property. But recently in Radhakrishna Industry versus State of Himachal Pradesh, the Honorable Supreme Court, while dealing with provision related to provisional attachment, held that the power to order a provisional attachment of the property of the taxable person, including a bank account, is a draconian in nature. And it was further held that the conditions in the statute for valid exercise of the power must be strictly fulfilled. So there are certain conditions that before you go for provisional attachment, you have to have a proper opinion. All other conditions are there, but unfortunately, we see that it's a blatantly used tool of attachment by the department. And further, the Honorable Supreme Court said that the exercise of the power for ordering a provisional attachment must be preceded by the formation of an opinion by the Commission that it is necessary so to do for the purpose of protecting the interest of the government revenue. Before ordering a provisional attachment, the Commissioner must form an opinion on the basis of tangible material that the assessee is likely to defeat the demand, if any, and therefore it is necessary so to do for the purpose of protecting the interest of the government revenue. So this judgment will come handy for most of us, many of us, where we find our taxpayers that attachments have been done, property attachment or bank attachment. So we can very well use this judgment. So friends, just I have a last slide to discuss, deliberate, and it is on a very a topic which is of interest for all of us, that is our input tax credit. We have seen the crux of GST is input tax credit, and lot of controversies have already happened on this issue. Lot of amendments, lot of changes have already done. Let us go. I will just be addressing these 2-3 issues: legality of Rule 36(4), a discussion on 2A versus 2B. There is a new addition in Section 16(2), buyer to pay for seller's default. But before addressing, I think we should just go through background of this input tax credit and the design of the law. So first and foremost is whether there is always an argument whether input tax credit is a vested right or a statutory concession, and we have plethora of judgments on both the sides that earlier regime of excise and service tax. But even if we treat it as a statutory concession, though we have a 101 Constitutional Amendment Act which says the objective of introducing GST is to do away the cascading effect by giving seamless input tax rate, but still let us take on a conservative basis that it's merely a statutory concession. The design of Section 16 has been in such a way that there is Section 16(1) which says that you are eligible for input tax credit if you are using it or are having intention to use it for the furtherance of business. Then there comes Section 16 subsection 2, which is a non-withstanding provision where there are 4 subsections, Section 2A, B, C, D. And if you read it all together, one taxpayer or as a consultant, we feel that these are the 4 basic conditions one need to satisfy to avail input tax credit. So subsection 1 talks about you should have received the goods or services. Second says you should have the invoice in your possession. Third says that the tax should have been paid in the government treasury. And the fourth, the recipient should have filed the returns to claim it. So these 4 conditions are there. Now, if you see the design of the law, there is Section 41 of CGST Act which says that when you file the return, 3B return, a summary return, when you claim that input tax credit, that will just be a provisional credit allowed to you. It's not a final. When it will become final, it will become final only when the matching happens properly between the supplier and the recipient. So for matching of ITC, there was Section 42, Section 43. There are 2 sections still in the law book, but the section were designed in such a way that they talked about matching of ITC, and matching was possible only when we had GSTR 2 or GSTR 3 in place, which we didn't have from the initial time. So Section 42, Section 43 as such becomes redundant. Now, Finance Act 2018 has introduced another section, Section 43A. Section 43A has been inserted, but unfortunately it has not yet been notified. And what does this section say? It talks about matching. It says that you will be eligible for input tax credit only to the excess of 20%. To the excess of 20%, which is matched. So the provision was inserted. However, this provision, Section 43A, was not yet all notified. It is still not yet notified. At the same time, we also got an amendment in the Rule 36 by inserting 36(4), where it said that, no, we will be giving you credit only in excess of the ITC, matching 20%, then 10%, and then 5%. So it was notified. And so now what is the status? As of now, we have only 36(4). We don't have 43A, which has not yet been notified. So we have a rule in place which says that we will restrict your input tax credit while there is no legislature to support it. And when there is a controversy between a legislature, the provision, and a subordinate legislature, that is rule, always the legislature always overrides. So if in my view, if you satisfied the 4 conditions which are there in Section 16, subsection 2, I think 36(4) has no legal backing itself. And it's a very settled law. I would just quote a Supreme Court judgment, Babaji Kondaji, Nasik Merchant Cooperative Bank, where it says, Supreme Court says, now if there is any conflict between a statute and a subordinate legislature, it does not require elaborate reasoning to formally state that the statute prevails over subordinate legislature and the bylaws. And the bylaws, if not in conformity with the statute, in order to give effect to the statutory provision, the rules or bylaws has to be ignored. The statutory provision has precedence and must be complied with. So where does 36(4) gets power from? It would be getting from 43A, but it has not yet been notified. So in my humble view, there is no legal backing to 36(4), and we are getting day in, day out notices of mismatch with two-way and input tax credit, which has been availed. So I feel that it will not stand the test of law. Another indication which supports my argument is that now in this union budget, we have another condition which has come up in form of 16(2) subsection AA. It reads as the details of invoice or debit note referred to in clause A has been furnished by the supplier in statement of outward supplies, and such details have been communicated to the recipient of such invoice or debit note in the manner specified in section 37. So meaning thereby now we don't have 4 conditions in the provision, we have 5 conditions. The 5th condition has been inserted by the union budget, but still let me tell you, this provision has also not yet been notified. Though it has taken part of the law, it has become part of the law, but it has yet not been notified. But this adds to my argument that now the government has opened up, and now they have brought in this legislation, this piece of legislation to support this rule 36(4). So till the time this provision, this condition 16(2) becomes notified, 36(4) is not valid in my view, and all the notices which we are getting for match mismatch, I can be legally could be treated as void ab initio and has to be legally challenged. Now coming to this 36(4) means two-way reconciliation. Now coming to 2B. Now from where this 2B has come up? So 36(4) says that we have identified a arbitrary date, 13th of next month or 11th of month till the credit which would be eligible or would be reflected by that time only will be available to you. So now there was no mechanism to identify, because I will not be opening my portal on 13th. Maybe I want to file a return on 19th. I will be opening my portal on 19th. So how would I know how much of input tax credit I was available to? So they have introduced this form 2B. This 2B also have no legal backing. If you go to the provision of law, there is no supporting provision to support this 2B. It is merely a mechanism. It is merely a tool to identify your credit up to a certain date of say 13th or 11th as the case may be. But it also has no legal backing. So all the notices and the arguments which are having on 36(4) would not stand a test of law. This is my view. Another important thing which I would like to highlight here is this rule 36(4) was inserted from somewhere in October 2019. October 2019. So where is a question of matching of credit of say 17-18 or 18-19. But if you file a refund application for 18-19 or even the audits are started happening in the department, they are asking for two-way reconciliation. Now on what basis they are asking for this two-way reconciliation? It's purely a rule, and rule can't be implemented or made applicable retrospective. It is to be prospective only. So you have to keep a note of this, that we have to fight it out legally. Then we already discussed a new subsection has been added, 16(2) AA. Now, if you check the validity or the constitutional upholding of this provision, what it says that only the invoices or debit note which has been furnished by the supplier and has been communicated to the recipient would be eligible as input tax credit. So this is a one stand. Now there is another provision in the law, section 38, which says that when your supplier would be filing GSTR1 and you would be getting it reflected in 2A, and if any of your purchases are not visible or not visible in 2A, you can add up on your own. Though that was there, but we never saw GSTR2 coming up, so it was never implemented. But as on date, we have two provisions in the law book, 16(2) AA vis-a-vis section 38. Section 38 is in our interest. It gives us free hand to add those invoices so that we can claim the credit. But now 16(2) AA restricts my input tax credit only to those invoices or debit note which are there in my 2A. So again, there is a controversy. There are two provisions which are not in line with each other. So again, there are plethora of judgment which I can quote. But when we say how to interpret a law, when we have two sections, both the sections are going different way. One is in favor of the revenue, another is favor of assessee. How to interpret? So the harmonious construction of interpretation says that when there are two conflicting provisions in the Act which cannot be reconciled with each other, they should be so interpreted that if possible, effect should be given to both. You can't make one redundant provision. You can't make a provision, no, 38 is redundant, let's stick to 16(2)(a). No, you can't do that. This is the essence of rule of harmonious construction. The court have also kept in mind that an interpretation which reduces one of the provision as dead letter or useless lumber is not a harmonious construction. To harmonize is not to destroy any statutory provision or to render it constructionless. So if you see this provision 16(2)(a), it makes my section 38 a dead provision. So that should not be the way in which the provision should be interpreted. Another problem with 16(2)(a) is doctrine of supervening impossibility. There is a doctrine that you can't expect me to do impossible. Now, what this 16(2)(a) wants, it tells me that I will be giving you a credit of only those much amount which has been filed by the supplier. Now, is the supplier under my control? Can I control him? Can I dictate him that no, you first file your return or do this and this? No, he's not. He's beyond my control. So how can you expect something impossible from me? Because he's not in my control. How can you expect that? So again, that could be a ground to challenge this new addition which has been made in section 16(2). And last point, again, I would like to deliberate on it. Buyer's fault. Is it a fault of buyer if the seller doesn't pay? And it's a very interesting issue which is now blowing up. We have a lot of judgment in the earlier VAT regime, but VAT was a state subject. So every state has their own VAT law. Our own Maharashtra, we had Mahalakshmi cotton judgment where the Advocate General has put up a submission that we will first act against the defaulting seller and then we will act against the buyer, but it has rarely happened. But in case of Delhi, in case of Madras, in case of Punjab and Haryana, all this provision or the liability which was fixed on the buyer was struck down by the honorable courts. In Arise India judgment of Delhi High Court or in Punjab, Haryana, there was a judgment. So they have struck down because those provisions were there in the VAT Act. But if we talk about the GST provision, again, it's a very difficult or proposition that you are catching the innocent bona fide buyer who has taken the credit on the fault of a seller who has not paid the tax. So we have got a judgment also recently from Madras High Court in case of DY Bethel Enterprise. The Madras High Court has very well categorized that there is certain fundamental flaw in this section 16(2) subsection C, which mandates that payment of tax has to be done for credit. It has quashed it for two reasons. First is non-examination of seller in the inquiry, and second, non-initiation of recovery against the seller. So you have not done inquiry also against the seller, neither you have done any recovery action against the seller, and you are going behind the buyer, the innocent buyer, to catch hold of him. So I think this is just a beginning of a battle, and it will go a long way, because this would be a very big issue in GST, that your seller has not paid tax in the government treasury and it will be recovered from the buyer. So in due course of time only we'll come to know how things turn up, whether it turn up in favor of the buyer or not. So I think that's all from my side. I'm thankful to all of you for a very patient listening, and thank you Nagpur branch for giving me a chance to deliberate on the top 10. Thank you very much.
Naresh bhai, your voice is not audible. Not able to listen to your voice. I will take it up. It's an excellent session by Ritesh. Superb efforts. So many things covered in this short time span. Really amazing, Ritesh. And I'm just feeling that, okay, fine, one who is listening, you would feel that you should continue on and on. Why there should be any time restrictions for a prolific speaker like you? Naresh sir, if you are audible, you could just take up the questions.
I think Naresh bhai is not audible.
So you are not audible. There is some issue in your system, I feel. Fine. We will take up the queries. There's one query from C. Bhadresh Mehta ji. Probably announced that late fee on all the GST returns shall be waived, but the same is not done with GSTR 9. Any update on the same?
Yes, so there is no announcement for GSTR 9. The relaxation is only for 3B and 1. But I suppose the portal is not levying late fees for GSTR 9. So you kindly check out with portal.
Right.
But there is no relaxation for 9. Yeah.
Okay. Naresh bhai is audible.
Audible now?
Yes, you're audible now.
Right.
Before we pick up, sir, there is one more query of Sanjay Agrawal ji, the secretary of the branch. He was asking when we started that, what about the interest on reversal of transitional credit? If the transitional credit has been reversed, whether any interest would be leviable?
So it's a quite a tricky question, because transitional credit, if you have reversed it, now we need to identify what was the ground on reversal. If you have wrongly claimed a transitional credit and you have availed it in GST regime, and then later on a notice from department, it was brought to your notice that no, you are not eligible for the claim, and they've asked you to reverse it. So you have reversed it. No, there was no penal provision. But the question remains to see is whether you have utilized that credit or not. If you have utilized that credit, then obviously interest would be applicable. But if you are not utilized it, if you have just availed it and it is lying in your credit ledger and you reverse it, then there is no question of interest. I think it's a strong case to fight for. We can fight for it.
Thank you, Ritesh. An excellent session actually it's going on. नागपुरियंस की एक खासियत ही होती है कि हमेशा कुछ ना कुछ नया और अच्छा अलग हटके कुछ चीजें कर पाते हैं. इट्स ऑलवेज प्लेजर टू हियर फ्रॉम यू. एक हमेशा एक क्वेश्चन क्या आता है, जैसे गडकरी जी की कभी स्पीच सुनते हैं, बहुत डाउन टू अर्थ ग्राउंड लेवल पे बहुत सारी चीज बोलते हैं. एक उनका कहना आता है कि कोर्ट एंड जुडिशियरी इज द ओनली ऑप्शन विच द सिटीजन ऑफ द कंट्री हैव. जैसे आज के आपके डिस्कशन में बहुत सारे ऐसे इश्यूज है जो अभी तक सेटल नहीं हुए हैं. एज अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट इंस्टीट्यूट हमारे अपने रिस्ट्रिक्शंस होते हैं. वी कैन नॉट नॉक द डूअर्स ऑफ द कोर्ट एज अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट, क्योंकि कोर्ट का कहना है और गवर्नमेंट का कहना आता है इट्स द बिजनेस एसोसिएशन हु हैव टू टेक अप द थिंग्स. जो चेयरमैन सर से जब ये प्रोग्राम डिजाइन कर रहे थे टॉप 10, तो सबसे पहला इश्यू था क्या हमने टॉप 10 करना चाहिए, टॉप 5 करना चाहिए या टॉप 20. तो एक टॉप 10 लगा के काफी हद तक रीजनेबल रहेगा कि 10 अमेंडमेंट 10 आएंगे. लेकिन आज सुन के वापिस लग रहा है कि टॉप 10 की जगह टॉप 20 टॉप 30 भी हो सकते थे ये सेशंस. तो एक बार लग रहा है कि बहुत सारी चीज जो सेटल्ड हो जानी चाहिए वो सेटल्ड नहीं हो पा रही है. तो एक कोशिश थी जो चेयरमैन सर का कॉन्सेप्चुअलाइज किया हुआ आइडिया था कि इस फोरम में क्या करते हैं, एक बार सब लोग हम लोग एक्टिवेट होते हैं, प्रोफेशनल एक्टिवेट होते हैं सब लोग मिलके. एंड देयर आर सो मेनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. यू आर अटैच्ड विद नागपुर नागविदर्भ चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स से अटैच्ड है, साकेत सर कोई और द एडिशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से अटैच है, चांडक सर है, विद्या बिजनेस एसोसिएशन है, सचिन जाजोदिया जी है, महेंद्र जैन सर है और सभी लोग, प्रफुल्ल बागड़ी जी है. कहीं ना कहीं कोई ना कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से अटैच्ड है. तो यहाँ से हम लोग डिस्कशन लेके कोई पर्टिकुलर इश्यूज टेकअप करते हैं. जैसे आज आपका बार बार कहना है बायर्स फॉल्ट, सेलर्स लाइबिलिटी. तो कुछ इश्यू लेके कल कपिल हिरानी जी का परसों एक सेशन था. ही इज प्रैक्टिसिंग एज एन एडवोकेट. तो हम लोग मिलके धीरे धीरे असेंबल होते हैं, सब बिजनेस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को यूनाइट करके कोई ऐसे इश्यू टेकअप करते हैं, क्योंकि अब रेमेडी एडामेंसी पॉलिटिकल एट इट्स पीक रहती है. विच सो एवर इज द गवर्नमेंट में भी, कांग्रेस रहे, बीजेपी रहे, बीएसपी रहे, कोई भी गवर्नमेंट रहे, इट्स ओनली द कोर्ट विच कैन गेट द थिंग्स डन. तो विद दिस टॉप 10 कॉन्सेप्ट का एक एजेंडा जो था वो ये था कि सबको यूनाइट करके अवेयरनेस करके जहां कोई रेमेडी नहीं है वहां हम लोग मिलके एक फंड्स भी जमा कर पाए. जैसे हम लोगों ने कोविड के समय में सब लोगों ने मिलके एम्बुलेंस और बाकी एक्टिविटीज के लिए किया. वी हैव मेड अ डिफरेंस इन दिस सिटी. लाइकवाइज इस पार्ट पे भी हम लोग आगे बढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं। फॉर चिरतेज में काफी क्वेश्चंस, या यस सर, चेयरमैन सर,
I've enabled the option of unmuting themselves to each
Right.
of the participants. So in case the participants wish to ask any question, they can unmute themselves and they can ask the question directly. Let this be a direct conversation.
Yes.
Physical things are not there, but let this be made like a physical thing.
एक क्वेश्चन जब तक आया था मैं उसको कवर कर देता हूँ। क्रिप्टो करेंसी पे क्या जीएसटी का इम्प्लीकेशन आ सकता है रितेश भाई इसमें भी?
आई थिंक नरेश भाई आपका फेवरेट टॉपिक लगता है क्रिप्टो करेंसी।
नहीं, अभी अभी रिसेंट में काफी डिस्कशन आ रहे हैं यार।
यस, तो many of people are going for cryptocurrency. So taxation of cryptocurrency is really अभी तो बड़ा complex है। अभी there are no clarification as such because cryptocurrency itself has not been approved or there is no regulatory mechanism at least in India or any other country. तो अगर हम GST implication की बात करें तो cryptocurrency है क्या? It's nothing but a currency. So like we have dollars or yen or it's like currency, but the problem is it's not a authorized currency. It's a virtual currency. और ऐसा कोई regulator भी नहीं है उसका which I authorized it. So if you see on GST is on supply of goods or services, या तो goods होना चाहिए, service होना चाहिए. तो whether cryptocurrency falls in the definition of goods or services वो देखना पड़ेगा. So if you see the definition of goods, it says that goods include everything. It excludes money and currency. It excludes money. Currency तो कहीं define नहीं है GST Act में. But if you go to FEMA Act or even in GST Act, money को इन्होंने जो currency को define किया इन्होंने, just a minute, I will just go through the section. It says it should be authorized by the government. So that should be there. I will just go to the definition of goods. Goods means every kind of movable property other than money and securities. And further they say money means Indian legal tender or any foreign currency, check, promissory note, bill of exchange, letter of credit, draft, pay order, traveler's check, other instrument recognized by Reserve Bank of India, used for settlement. So no doubt cryptocurrency is also used for settlement, but it is not authorized by Reserve Bank of India. So it will not fall in the exception of currency. So it would be treated as goods and trading would attract GST. अब उसका रेट भी नहीं है, तो इवन एट द टाइम ऑफ 2017 गवर्नमेंट ने फोर्स ही नहीं किया होगा कि लोग क्रिप्टो में इतना ट्रेडिंग करेंगे। सो रेसिडुअरी रेट जो है 18% का, दैट वुड बी एप्लीकेबल टू इट, बट स्टिल वी हैव टू वेट फॉर सर्टेन रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क एंड क्लैरिफिकेशन फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट।
लोगों के कुछ और क्वेश्चंस होंगे। एक क्वेश्चन था किसी का डेट ऑफ प्रोप्राइटर हो जाती है तो वेदर आईटीसी का जो सेट ऑफ है वो सब्सिक्वेंट जो लीगल हेयर है उनको मिल जाता है, और अगर वो फॉर्मेलिटीज क्या 1 महीने में अगर नहीं कर पाते हैं तो इन दैट केस व्हाट कुड बी द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस इन दैट। हम लोगों ने क्या किया, इसके अलावा भी लोगों के कोई डिस्कशन रहते हैं, कोई क्वेरीज है, सजेशन है, वो भी टेकअप कर लेते हैं ताकि एक पूरा मंथली कुछ नए इश्यूज है वी कैन टेक अप जॉइंटली।
बट यू हैव हाइलाइटेड अ वेरी बर्निंग इशू। ये बहुत बड़ा इशू है, बहुत लोग इसमें दे आर फेसिंग ए प्रॉब्लम कि लोग डेथ होगी प्रोप्राइटर की या ट्रांसफर ऑफ बिजनेसेस है। द प्रोविजन इज देयर कि आपको आईटीसी ट्रांसफर कर सकते हैं, बट देयर इज आल्सो टाइम फ्रेम टू डू इट। और ऑनलाइन है गया आपको सारी चीजें, तो आपको वो ऑनलाइन विद इन द प्रिस्क्राइब्ड टाइम ऑफ 30 days हैज टू बी डन, अदरवाइज यू आर नॉट एलिजिबल टू क्लेम द क्रेडिट। सो द ओनली ऑप्शन इज you claim it in your GST return and give a submission to the proper officer that this is a fact and this has happened because of certain genuine grounds. We could not have availed the credit in the recipient's ledger, and that would be the only course of action available to us, because credit lapsing is a very big issue. Otherwise credit will get lapsed.
But then whether the department will be able to allow it?
It is a matter of litigation. Officer भी he will not say yes.
System based.
It's a system.
रितेश भाई, सचिन
भाई बोलिए।
रितेश भाई, ऐसा एक्सपीरियंस है मतलब जैसे कुछ चीजें मेरे पे नोटिस में है कि ऑफिसर बहुत रिलक्टेंट है इस चीज के लिए, बोले हमारे पास सिस्टम ड्रिवन चीजें है तो हम कर नहीं सकते, तो कैन वी मेक रिप्रेजेंटेशन थ्रू दिस वेरियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस और वी थ्रू आईसीए कि सर इस पीरियड में द टाइम फ्रेम शुड बी इनहांस्ड and the commissioner, chief commissioner, since we have a chief commissioner in Nagpur, we can ask him to provide a time limit of at least 60 days or 90 days. क्योंकि कई फैमिली में कई बड़े लोग को तकलीफ हो रही है अभी कोविड के चक्कर में, and they have not done all the formalities. तो ये चीज कर सकते हैं क्या?
वेरी जेन्युइन ग्राउंड और होना ही चाहिए, बट आई थिंक चीफ कमिश्नर या कोई जुरिसडिक्शनल प्रिंसिपल कमिश्नर वोंट हैव अ पावर टू डू इट. इट हैज टू बी डन इन द एक्ट ओनली. तो वी शुड टेक इट अप इन द जीएसटी काउंसिल मीटिंग, ग्रीवियंस काउंसिल कमेटी मीटिंग को भी हम ले सकते हैं. बट आई थिंक दिस इज अ वेरी जेन्युइन ग्राउंड. अभी कोविड में बहुत जगह ऑबिचुअरीज हुई है एंड ट्रांसफर ऑफ बिजनेस टेक्स सम टाइम टू हैपन. सो people should not lose their genuine bona fide credit. This is a very good issue. नरेश भाई अपने इसको ले सकते हैं.
That's true. Yes. Another तरुण सावल जी का क्वेश्चन है. तरुण भाई आप अनम्यूट करके कैन यू आस्क अ क्वेश्चन? ज्यादा इंटरेक्टिव सेशन हो जाएगा. तरुण, जब तक मैं उनका क्वेश्चन रीड आउट कर देता हूँ. इन 2017-18 with the turnover of VAT rate will be included for calculating limit under section 10(3).
Limit under section 10 composition के लिए बोल रहे हैं.
Regarding withdrawal from composition eligibility.
Composition, this aggregate turnover में this will not come under for the first quarter.
But during audit they are not accepting that. So what are the remedies available to explain them? Because there is no precedent for any such cases.
Yes. So the only ground available to us is the definition of aggregate turnover.
Yes, on that basis, even I conveyed them that on that basis, even if somebody has a turnover during 16-17 less, even any turnover during 16-17, they can go for composition scheme during 17-18 because there also the limit that of 75 lakhs or 1 crore was aggregate turnover was used.
Correct.
But they are not accepting that. They are giving a claim that if somebody has a 16-17, 55 lakhs of turnover, they will not be eligible for composition.
In fact, Tarun bhai, you can take a shelter of a circular which was issued by the CBAC for annual return filing in the first year itself. Yeah. Even in that circular, they have clarified that this 3 months turnover has to be excluded for calculating the turnover for the purpose of GST 9 and 9C. You can take a help of that circular. Otherwise, it's purely a matter of litigation.
Okay, thanks.
Anil Kedia ji, Satish Daddar ji is also there with us. Quick query. Yes, Hemant Khandelwal ji is also there. Divesh Nathani ji is there from Chandrapur. Sir, yeah.
Can I ask some question?
Yes, Hemant ji.
मुझे ये पूछना था, अभी जो रिसेंट अमेंडमेंट राइस मिलिंग एक्टिविटी के लिए हुआ है, उसमें वो एग्जेम्प्टेड कैटेगरी में है कि वो टैक्सेबल ही रहेगा?
नहीं, उसमें it is taxable only. Exemption is only for when the supply is under PDS, public distribution system में अगर आप काम कर रहे हैं, then only there will be exemption. Otherwise आप other than government करें तो it remains continue to be.
नहीं, what is the अभी जो प्रेजेंटली राइस मिलिंग एक्टिविटी होती है, ये गवर्नमेंट डीएमओ या ट्राइबल डेवलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन को देती है, एंड वी एज ए राइस मिलर वी यूज्ड टू execute agreement with them for the milling activity. This is the present situation over here. So what will be the status of taxable, whether it is taxable?
That's what I said, Naki. But we have to see whether that authority is a government entity, state government hai kya? Because it's not a state government as such.
Yeah.
It's the authority of government. तो गवर्नमेंट अथॉरिटी की अगर परिभाषा में आता है तो आई थिंक द बेनिफिट शुड बी देयर, द एग्जम्पशन शुड कंटिन्यू.
इज इट नॉट एनीथिंग रिलेटेड विद द फोर्टिफिकेशन ऑफ द राइस?
बहुत से स्टेट
फोर्टिफिकेशन ऑफ द राइस और व्हीट इज कंपल्सरी, बिकॉज़ वी डोंट नीड ए
बट दैट एग्जाम.
या गो अहेड,
बोलिए हेमंत भाई बोलिए.
देखिए, फोर्टिफिकेशन ऑफ जो दिया है उन्होंने, it is linked with the fortification of wheat flour or rice, then only exemption is available, or otherwise it is also available if we do it for the government.
It is exemption is on milling.
Yeah.
Milling of wheat or this.
What is that 25% value? What is that 25%?
That is the material value. And what they say कि एक exemption notification है कि composite supply अगर आप कर रहे हैं government को, where the material value is less than 25% of total value, then you enjoy an exemption. Then the exemption is already there. Unfortunately, milling बोलिए या fortification बोलिए, it doesn't enjoy exemption as such.
Yeah.
So if you are doing it for private party, though it is related to agriculture produce, it is not exempted. GST is applicable.
Yeah.
But they have taken out from the notification, exemption notification, which says that if you are making composite supply, and this is not applicable only for agriculture produce, it can be applicable for anything. If you are making a composite supply where the material value is less than 25% of the total value, and it is to central government, state government authority, local authority, then you enjoy the exemption. So they said that millers units which were doing milling, they already were enjoying this exemption because they were supplying the finished goods, which was only 25% was the material value. Hardly it is 5-10% material value. More is the service value and service portion only.
Yeah.
Job work charges. So that exemption is already there. So they have clarified it. It's not an amendment. So it would be applicable from the first day itself. So but the only question remains is to be seen is whether this exemption would be applicable. It is clearly applicable for central, state, and local authority, no doubt. But whether it will be equally applicable to government entity and government enterprises. For private, obviously it is taxable. There is no exemption.
Okay. But
there is no exemption.
As per your opinion, it was exempted earlier also?
It was earlier. That is what they have clarified it.
So we have to keep the status of the executing organization, whether it is their government or local.
Who is your recipient? That will depend. Notification, कोई भी exemption notification में जो conditions दिए, that should be satisfied. अगर वो बोला है कि recipient ये following recipient है, इनको ही exemption है, तो there is no question of exemption to other category ना. वो तो maintain रखने को.
Thank you. Thank you.
रितेश भाई, सतीश बाबू साटा जी है, ओम प्रकाश जी अग्रवाल जी है, एकदम साइलेंट रहे ना तो थोड़ा चार्म नहीं आएगा. सतीश भैया कुछ स्पेसिफिक?
सतीश भैया और ओपी भैया भी कुछ ऐड कर सकते हैं अगर मैंने कोई
या सतीश भैया.
Alek, please put up your question.
Alek has a question.
Good evening, sir. What if 31st May को somebody has closed his business and started a new one on 1st June? So आपने जैसे कहा कि ट्रांसफर ऑफ आईटीसी के लिए विद इन 30 days he has to file the return and transfer the credit. तो सर जो एंटिटी फर्स्ट को एग्जिस्टेंस में आ रही है वो तो फर्स्ट के बाद ही रजिस्ट्रेशन अप्लाई करेगा. तो इज देयर मतलब उसको भी 30 days के अंदर ही पूरे कंप्लायंस करने पड़ेंगे या he can do something मतलब जो
what is the provision? Hello.
हाँ सर बोलिए.
Alek, please mute कीजिए आप. हाँ. The provision is very clear that if you want to take the benefit of transfer business, जैसे आपने कहा कि 31st May को आपने business close किया और you are starting from 1st of June new entity, you are free to apply. अगर आप new entity as such, if you are free bird, तो आप तो जब तक आपका aggregate turnover cross नहीं हो तब तक आपको registration की जरूरत नहीं है. But if you want to take the benefit of the credit which was there and it's only on transfer of business, दो ही instance में मिलेंगे. It should be transfer of business or death of the proprietor. तो अगर आपको registration आप जब apply कर रहे हैं तो you have to mention the reason of registration और वहाँ पे कैटेगरी पूछिए कि किस लिए आप registration ले रहे हैं. You have to mention that because of death of proprietor you are taking the registration, and for that there is a time limit.
Death of proprietor की केस में time limit
yes,
है.
30 time limit. Yes.
And what if there is a change in constitution? Say I am a proprietor in 31st of May and on 1st of June I am a partnership now.
But it will again depend कि आपने वो business को take over किया, transfer किया या it's a completely separate unit, two legal entity.
It has been taken over by the partnership.
हाँ, तो if your deed has that mention that you will take over this proprietorship, then it's a transfer of business. Again 30 days का time उसमें आपको claim करना पड़ता. You have to apply within the time.
Sir, कहीं ऐसी कंडीशन है क्या कि we have to complete all the returns and then only transfer the credit या हम credit करते हैं?
No. आप credit तो ले सकते हैं. उसके लिए return filing is not important. Your registration is important.
Second entity का जो ना exist में आ रहा है.
रितेश भाई.
Yes sir.
हाँ, अब नरेश ने बोला कुछ पूछना है तो कुछ पूछना ही पड़ेगा.
पूछो मत, बोले बताना है, बोले आपको पूछने को नहीं.
जो अपन जो रिफंड एप्लीकेशन करते हैं तो इमीडिएटली ऑन एप्लीकेशन ही वो अपना क्रेडिट लेजर डेबिट कर देते हैं. वो रिफंड एप्लीकेशन कब एक्सेप्ट होंगी और अगर रिजेक्शन हो जाता है तो हम अपील पे जाते हैं, तो जब तक कि वो पूरा हमारे डेबिट ही पड़ा रहता है. और इवन इफ यू विथड्रॉ द अपील तो भी वो उसको इफेक्ट नहीं देते जल्दी से. तो एक्चुअली जब हमारा रिफंड एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हैं देन ओनली दे शुड डेबिट द क्रेडिट लेजर. ऐसा वी शुड गिव सम रिप्रेजेंटेशन मेरे ख्याल से, अदरवाइज वो ब्लॉक हो जाता है हमारा।
यस।
और कई बार वो टाइम पीरियड इतना हो जाता है, जैसे कोविड अगर थर्ड वेव और आ गई समझ लो, तो बीच में फिर और वो बढ़ जाता है, तो उस समय हमारे सब जो पोजीशन है वो बदल जाती है कि हम हो सकता है कि हमारे को पेमेंट आ रहा है, तो देन वी विल नॉट रिक्वायर दैट रिफंड। तो इसके बारे में जरा सा हमने देना चाहिए मेरे ख्याल से।
बट उसमें क्या मॉडल्स ऑपरेंडी क्या होंगे, क्योंकि अगर आपने अप्लाई कर लिया है रिफंड, दैट मींस यू वांट दैट अमाउंट।
जब तक कि मेरा वो एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहे रिफंड, तब तक कि मेरा क्रेडिट लेजर डेबिट नहीं होना चाहिए।
हाँ, यानी आपका कहना है कि
मेरे ख्याल से एक्साइज में पहले ऐसा ही था,
जिस दिन रिफंड ऑर्डर सैंक्शन हो उसी दिन मेरा अकाउंट,
उस दिन आप डेबिट कर दीजिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। एक्साइज में मेरे ख्याल से ऐसा ही था भाई, पहले नहीं होता था ऐसा।
नहीं, पहले तो मैनुअल रिकॉर्ड्स थे ना, ऑनलाइन था ही नहीं।
हाँ, नहीं वही बोला मैं,
हो सकता है इट्स जैसा आईपीओ में होता है कि जब अलॉटमेंट लिखता है तभी अपने अकाउंट से लेंगे, तब तक अकाउंट में ब्लॉक रखेंगे, बट अकाउंट में ब्लॉक रखना भी नहीं, यानी यू वांट इट कि अकाउंट में भी फ्री अवेलेबल हो हमारे पास में यूज करने के लिए। हो सकता है।
किशोर बुधराजा सर है, कीर्ति भाई ठक्कर, अजय मामिडवाल जी भी चंद्रपुर से है। एनीथिंग सर वी कैन टेक अप हियर?
नरेश भाई डिनर भी है क्या फिर?
बस सर हो गया, 5 मिनट में खत्म करते हैं, ताकि क्या होता है इंटरेक्शन हो जाए। एक्चुअली क्या हो रहा है, हमने सब टॉप 10 सीरीज में रेगुलर पार्टिसिपेशन हो जा रहे हैं सब लोगों के।
ऐसा करना चाहिए, जो लास्ट में रहते हैं ना उनके लिए जोमेटो से आपने डिनर भेज देना चाहिए, क्या साके लोग?
That's a wonderful suggestion to be incorporated in future meetings, because we are really putting into it कि सर ने बोला हुआ तो physical meetings शुरू होंगी, and we are quite hopeful of it. We are extremely thankful to Ritesh for making this meeting so interesting on this.
But credit goes to the Nagpur branch. Credit goes to Nagpur branch and Naresh bhai, who is the brain behind this program, because बहुत अच्छा है education, बहुत अच्छा learning हो रहा है, no protocol, nothing. It's purely interaction.
True. Yeah. Saket, Chairman sir can take it forward then, sir.
Yes, sir. I would request you to kindly continue the meeting by proposing a formal vote of thanks.
I am really thankful to this today's speaker Ritesh bhai. इतने hot topic थे, इतने interesting चीजें थे, उसको इतने interesting में मैं cover किया with your personal opinion and views on each and everything. I'm thankful to you for taking up this session. I'm thankful to all the audience, to all the members for participating in this session and making it so interactive. Thank you all, friends. Thank you, Chairman sir. Thank you. We conclude the meeting now. Thank you.
Before we sign off, if somebody can, we are having a very good interaction. So if everybody can on their videos, so we can have a group photograph with all the remaining participants. If it is possible for maximum members, if they can just on their video for a moment, we will just capture this special moment of having an interaction with the GST Guru, Ritesh Mehta ji, and our past chairman Satish Sarda ji is also there, Ladar ji is there, Kirti Kumar sir is also there, Ajay ji is there from Chandrapur, Paresh bhai
Budhraja ji hai.
Fine. So one more moment and then I'm going to take that special click. Done. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Just take absolute care of yourself and do apply for the vaccination camps. It's on 22nd of June. Thank you so much.
Good.